I've gotten kind of bored filming in my house, and so I figured I would do an outdoor walk and talk a little bit. And it's also a beautiful day here in Charlottesville, Virginia, so why not? Why not walk and chat for a little bit? I saw yesterday that President Trump confirmed his 50th Article 3 judge of his term, this one to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. This is a lifetime appointment, and the guy is 39 years old. 39 years old and seems to be one of the worst chuds imaginable. Anti-birthright citizenship, anti-abortion, anti-trans rights, has a conception of the Constitution that essentially grants no rights to anyone but the right of wealthy men, and wealthy white men in particular, to do as they please, however they please. Perfect embodiment of Trump and everything he stands for. And then I mentioned this guy was 39. 39 years old. He'll be on the bench for decades. And there's obviously a lot more where that comes from. He's confirmed 50 people. One response to this is to say, well, you just have to impeach them all. But impeachment, you have to remember, is a two-step process. You impeach in the House, and then you remove in the Senate, which is the sentence. It takes a simple majority in the House to impeach, and it takes a two-thirds majority in the Senate to remove. And so sure, you can impeach these people, sure, and that's meaningful, right? It's a sanction. It's saying this person is unacceptable. This particular guy was unqualified, just a toady, a stooge for the president. No reason he should be there. But you're not going to remove them. That's basically implausible. You're not going to get enough Republican votes to do a removal, and the odds of winning 67 seats in the Senate, I mean, that hasn't happened since the 1930s, if I have my political history correct. So what do you do? What do you do about all these Trump judges? Here you should take a page from the conversation around the Supreme Court. Now, the case for expanding the Supreme Court in political terms is just that the Trump judges, the Republican justices, are engaged in lawless, essentially anti-constitutional behavior, overturning precedents with embarrassingly thin reasoning, making up doctrines to get the results that they want. And because removing them is not really feasible, the next best option is just to put more of them on there, drown them out essentially, dilute their influence. And you can take a similar approach with the entire federal judiciary. A thing to remember is that the only thing the Constitution says about the federal judiciary is that there shall be a Supreme Court and such inferior courts as Congress creates. Basically, everything about the federal judiciary is structured by congressional statute. The number of district courts, the number of circuit courts, the number of judgeships on each circuit court, everything is structured by Congress. Even much of the Supreme Court is structured by Congress, right? Other than saying that there shall be a Supreme Court and giving some, thin description of what its jurisdiction is, the Constitution doesn't have all that much to say. It used to be that Congress would routinely expand the size of the entire judiciary to keep pace with the population. In the same way that it used to be Congress would expand the Supreme Court to keep pace with the number of circuits, number of states, the population. The last major court expansion was in 1979 under Jimmy Carter. I believe the judiciary was expanded by more than a third. Hundreds of new judgeships created, Carter filled most, if not all of them, and many of those judges still sit on the bench. It's a huge part of Carter's overall legacy. Since that expansion, the population of the US has grown by a third. We got 340 million people, and we're still growing. And there hasn't been much in the way of change in the size of the courts. In fact, the US Judicial Commission, the body responsible for governing the courts and kind of keeping an eye on things, is constantly writing about the fact that actually we need more judges. Caseloads have grown too high. Individual judges have too much work. Cases move too slowly. So how do you deal with Trump judges in the federal judiciary? The same way you deal with them in the Supreme Court. You just drown them out. Any Supreme Court expansion plan should include a plan for the massive expansion of the federal judiciary. Expand it by a third in keeping with the overall population. Create new circuits if necessary. Create new district courts. All of this is within the power of Congress. You can even take those districts and those circuits where Trump judges predominate and split them up, break them up, reassign responsibilities. Congress can't take away a judgeship, But there's nothing in the rulebook that says you can't just assign the judge somewhere else. So many Republican plans for political dominance rest on the fact that the system has been static for decades. We have 50 states, we have 100 senators, we have 435 House members, we have 9 Supreme Court justices, so on and so forth. And the fact that things are static, that they haven't changed, means that if you can game the system, if you can lock in an advantage within that static system, then you win. It's hard to dislodge you. Sure, an exogenous shock might do it, but other than that, you're in good shape. The solution to this has to be to add dynamism back to the system. And the quickest and surest and constitutional path to adding dynamism is just to create more stuff, more judgeships, more states. Trump was warning recently that if you elect Democrats, they'll create a bunch of states, new senators. He said he'd cry.
The Democrats are going to terminate the filibuster as soon as they have a chance. And then they're going to approve Puerto Rico and D.C. as a state. They got 4 more senators. They're going to end up with 12 more congressmen. They're going to get like 40 electoral votes. If they are allowed to do that, by that time I'll be sitting home. And I'm not a big crier. I don't think you want to see me cry, you know? There are some people, they do very well when they cry, but you don't want to see me cry, but I may be crying when I...
Well, let's make him cry, you know? Let's make him cry. Expand the federal judiciary. Give at least DC statehood. And look for ways to add dynamism back to the system, to make control of a static environment unviable. It's not a panacea, but I do think it's the first step in actually trying to come back from this miserable moment.